Hey, everybody, it's Honesty, and welcome to season 4 of the Right Honesty podcast. This season, we are going back to the LB universe, and we're going to do Ezra and Lex, and then we're also going to do Winter and Raji. Attorney General, we've been talking a little bit before I open the show, but I'll ask you anyway, because this is our custom. How you doing?
I'm good. Thank you so much. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. Happy next Monday is a holiday.
Which I don't get off, but happy Monday next Monday too.
Okay, well, see, now that's something to write Congress about because it is a holiday. So I want everybody to recognize Indigenous Peoples Day and stay home. But I understand some people trade it for the day after Thanksgiving. Okay, so I will say for our readers that both Attorney General and myself are having life moments. So if we seem a little bit low energy, it might pick up after a while, but just know that there are ebbs and flows to life, and we are in between an ebb and a flow or something. So here we go. So usually you start, but I want to start this week because I have put out into the internet that Ezra and I go together. And I am not going to speak highly of Ezra much this episode. So I have to acknowledge first going in why I say me and Ezra go together. To me, just HP for me, and nobody else got to agree. The Ezra series is Love Belvin's best work to me. So I got the opportunity to speak with Joan Vassar, who did the Black series, which I'm still at the fort. I have moved in. My husband is with me now. We have a cabin in the back, but by the water, we're doing fine. But I mentioned to Joan that she was a surgeon, and what I meant by that was just that her books to me, HP. I don't mind if you disagree, but to me, her books are incredibly precise. There is not a whole lot of flab in her execution. To me, Ezra is that kind of book. It is incredibly precise.
Yeah.
I can be a skimmer over certain sections if I don't immediately see how they include the main couple, or if I feel like it's a little bit too much of a tangent. I didn't see that anywhere in Ezra.
I'd agree with that.
The other thing I will say about this series is that she wrote him like, okay, we got Trent and we got his rich inner monologue.
Mm-hmm.
The way she wrote the inside of Ezra's head is just sickening to me. It is so, she embodied him, but she does. I know, her clients and they come to her. Yep. He bared his soul to her.
Yes.
He laid himself wide open. Every tick, every smirk, every stroke of the beard, every, I'm holding my tongue for this reason. I'm sharing this for this reason. I'm going to tuck that in my back pocket. Like all of his mannerisms, his clothing, his everything. His reaction to Lex's reaction to him, everything was laser sharp.
Yeah.
And so when I think I read Trent first. I bumped my mic. I think I read Trent first. And then I came to Ezra and I said, this bit, like, I was like, how you ready? Like, I was like, oh, we writing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, mm-hmm. Okay, sis, I got you. Mm-hmm. Like it was crazy. So, and I was saying to Sean Chadwick in a DM that I can be honest about Ezra and his shortcomings, but in addition to him being written so incredibly well, I've not read anything else like it, but also he can fuck. And it is rare. I'm gonna be honest with you. There are 500,000 sex scenes in this series. Like there are many sex scenes. Some of them back to back, and they're all brand new.
Yes,
and they're all creative, and they're all like she did that. Mm-hmm. I really became a Love Belvin fan with Ezra. I was like, this is insane. So I will speak highly of her incredible skill and of these two characters, because I'm going to lay him to waste for the rest of this podcast. Attorney General, your opening remarks, please.
I mean, I agree with all of what you've said, right? I don't think I can't even remember now. I think my intro to LB was, it might have been Trent as well. It was the Connecticut Kings. And then I went back through her catalog, right?
I think I did too, because I think I went from Trent to Asmir, I think.
Yeah. And it's interesting because she has said that Ezra is still, to date, her most controversial client, right?
How, when Asmir is a
well, it'll be interesting, and we'll see, in the conversation, if we can get just a better understanding of that.
Yeah.
I am speculating that there were people who, there were some people who probably couldn't get past. I remember looking at some of the reviews at some point several years ago, when I first read Ezra. And I do remember seeing reviews where people were clearly struggling with the notion of this Christian man,
I don't know how. Oh, they must never been to church.
Well, and I also thought that is like a very elementary surface level, right? As if we're all just one thing. Because
honey, because the best hoes is saved. I'm talking
that,
about the
and also,
best.
But he also wasn't a hoe, right?
No.
He wasn't a hoe when we meet him.
No,
he tells us about when he was out there literally loving the world, right?
Yes.
But when we meet him, he has been very disciplined. He has been very much in harmony with the word, right?
Yes.
Which is why he goes into super speed to get married.
Yes.
So I thought that was like a very surface level objection to it. And I'm like, all right, well, you're not embracing the fact that all human beings have layers, right?
Absolutely.
We are all more than one thing. And candidly, we're talking about things that he was engaging with his wife. Now, you also got folks who get caught up in, it's like, now we got to start micromanaging the type of sex we have in the marital bed, right?
Exactly.
It's like, first we had to get married.
Okay, but now, the book says it's undefiled. So
well, and it's like now Jesus is micromanaging which positions and what we're supposed to be doing in the marital bed, which I have zero patience for that. But I also think, as we saw when we asked for feedback, right? Like, Ezra produces very strong reactions. So there were a couple of words that just kept coming up for me in reading it again. And I know that you and I have both read this series several times, right? But it was like, now we reread it for purposes of discussing it. But that the dichotomy of Ezra, right? And how it kept popping up. Because I thought his spirituality was in perfect harmony with his freaky deaky. I didn't see any contradiction there, right? But how he could be both so incredibly self-aware and so incredibly unself-aware. And it was just like, how are those two things? But going back to one of your opening points about the mastery of Love's writing, because you are, as the reader, you are watching that play out. You're like, wow, this man, he just had this incredibly insightful moment right here. And here he is, just as blind as a bat about this. Like, what in the world, sir? And the interesting thing for me was that helped me not completely damn him, not completely fall in love with him, right? But really, really enjoy watching his evolution. Because I was like, I see the potential here. But sir, like, how are you, sir?
That's a very good point. I think my love for Ezra is the art of Ezra. He's just such, I don't know how you hate such a well thought out and well fleshed out character.
I mean, I understand. Here's what I thought. And I heard your words in my head about emotionally unavailable men, right? Which I'm gonna come to in a second. I thought, as I read it for our discussion, I felt like we were being, if you wanted to root for him and love him, she was giving you just enough to do that.
Absolutely.
If you did not like him, you were also being given just enough to be like, I don't see, this is not working for me, right? And so it made sense to me that there were people who were like, he was bae. Look at the things he did. Rita gave us a great, shout out to Rita, because great list of how he was showing love, even though he was not saying the words. And in fairness, this was not an agreement based on love from the get-go, right? So it's not as if Lex from the door was looking for love from him, right? That was not the tenet of their agreement in the beginning. The problem became when her feelings began evolving.
Yes.
And his feelings were evolving too, but the man ain't never been in love before. He just didn't know what they were. He was like a Vulcan. He was literally, for the
thought his stomach was hurting. He thought he had the flu.
Exactly. For the Star Trek folks, he was literally like Mr. Spock, right?
He was Mr. Spock.
I was like, he's very Vulcan-like. He's very clinical, right?
Very clinical.
Yet he had these moments of incredible thoughtfulness and showing that he listened to her and he paid attention to her and things that she said, so on and so forth. But then he had those other moments where I understood, I think it was Sandra Yvonne who was just like, she couldn't connect with him. I got that too. That wasn't my experience, but I understood the camp of I couldn't connect with him, and I don't, if I was Lex, I wouldn't have given him a second chance, right? I think Kima was the one that said, I don't know if I would have gone back, and I got that too. I got that too.
Just because of the sandbox, I would have went back.
Well, let's set aside matters of the flesh, ma'am. Okay.
So I will say that. So two things jumped out at me that helped me to put word to emotion about the dichotomy that is Ezra. So the first is what made me mad about him is that he did not give her the benefit of informed consent.
Agreed.
And no matter what he wanted the arrangement to be, he should have given her the respect and the honesty that comes with informed consent. Especially since he knew that the reason he was seeking her out is because she was unaccounted for. He didn't know about Miss Rima, and when he found out about her, he hurried up and changed his plans to include her. But he initially expected her to be, I won't say his sex slave, but definitely his ready all the time sex companion.
Yeah.
And he wanted her to immediately jump into that headspace, because even in the very early days when he was like, stop worrying about money, you don't have to think about that, just find a job when you feel like it, just not really giving room or respect to the fact that she is a whole formed woman that has been on her own for much longer than most people her age.
Yes.
And he just didn't give breath or respect or care to that. He and in his process of molding her mind, it was almost like, how could you mold her mind without recognizing the inner workings of it?
Yes. There's a passage where he says, so much highlighting this time around, right? When he's acknowledging, he finally has his come to Jesus moment, right? When Karen Clark Sheard shows up to the church, and that's when he really, it starts with the conversation with Mary.
Yes.
And then I think it fully hits him, the lightning bolt hits him in church when Karen Clark Sheard is performing. But he says that he looked past her.
Yes.
Right. He was so focused on the fact that God had been faithful and had given him his helpmate that, to your point, he was just kind of like, great, she's here. Wonderful. Awesome. Now I can do what I need to do and have my release. And I'll take care of her. I'll make sure she's good. Right.
Like
almost someone said
was going to be enough.
Yes, someone used the reference. I think it was Joanna used the phrase checklist, right? That he basically was kind of like, okay, check. I'm gonna take care of your financial needs. Check. Get you the car that you mentioned that you wanted, which I thought was incredibly considerate.
Yes.
But also it was checking the box, right?
Yes.
Miss Rima, when to your point, he finds out about Miss Rima. Okay, well, she needs someplace to live. Check. Take care of that too, right?
Like a puppy.
Yes. But it was Vulcan, and it was clinical. It was very clinical like, right? And knowing that he was an engineer, this science driven mind, those things made perfect sense. And the other thing that struck me is that For all of his worldliness, his education,
Mm-hmm.
his spirituality, his sophistication, it was clear that Ezra did not have experience in an adult
Not at
romantic
all.
relationship.
Not at all.
Zero, right?
Mm-mm.
Zero. The man was hitting 40
Yep.
and clearly had never been in love, right? Whatever he
Yes.
experienced with Precious, that was not love, right?
Curiosity.
Exactly. And then he went around the world and right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Come
then
on,
he
Lisa.
came back. Exactly. Shout out Lisa Stanfield, right? Then he came back and he was celibate. And
Mm-hmm.
he said that he avoided putting himself in a position where he would be tempted. So
Mm-hmm.
we are meeting this 39 going on 40-year-old man that ain't never been in love before. That would be a huge red flag in the real world,
Yes.
right? We'd be
Yes.
like, never, never, ever, ever,
And
ever.
for how many men? Because here's the thing, whether they've been in relationships or not, get to that age or older and never experience or understand reciprocal love with a peer partner.
Yes, yes,
And so
yes.
you can have the girlfriend because you're supposed to have a girlfriend and you need somebody to cook, clean, and fuck. But are y'all peers and emotionally connected and friends and growing together and having hard conversations and being accountable to each other and being responsible for each other? Those are very different things. And so
Yes.
Ezra, like you said, for all of his worldliness and experience and education, really wasn't doing no better emotionally than Trent.
Correct. 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 Right?
Which
Like the
you don't think that's true, but it low-key might a little bit be.
yeah, when you finally get to the heart of the matter, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like when you understand that, then more of the oversights start, and it's not a justification, but they start making sense because you're
Yes.
like, Lord have mercy,
Because you can
how?
intellectualize everything.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
and to intellectualize your feelings instead of feeling your feelings don't get you where you think it gets you,
Correct.
So you can have all of these flowery words to explain something but still not get it.
Right.
And I think the difference between Ezra and Trent, or even Ezra and Rutt, is that Ezra had worked through his baggage with his father and intellectualized his relationship with his mother. And so he didn't have those gaping open wounds that Trent did.
Well, I agree with that. And yet I would say the wounds manifested themselves differently.
They did.
Right. Because what I would say about his relationship with Slimy Sylvester
Gross.
was he had worked through that relationship enough to say, I don't want to be anything like you.
Yeah.
Yet and still, we didn't get a sense of whether he had had exposure to another marriage that was a healthy, loving, respectful marriage. So he had enough to say, I don't want to be like him, but it didn't sound like he had enough to say, and I want to be like him as a husband, someone else as a husband, right?
In fact, he tells Trent that. He says, everything I know about love and relationships, I learned from my wife.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. That's right. That's right. So it was like he, even with his, dealing with Mary and Sylvester, he took it as far as, I know my marriage ain't gonna look like this foolery here.
Right. And
but then didn't go to the next step of saying, but the marriage that I will have, these are the pieces that I'm going to include to make sure. And again, he just whipped out his checklist, right? So I will be faithful to her. I will take care of her and provide for her, and I'll be respectful and so on and so forth. But it was like, bruh, you're
missing the point.
You are missing the point.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing I'll say is that, and I've been rolling this over in my head, the difference between Ezra and the Beast. So before we get to the questions and like the comments that people went, because that's what we're gonna do this time. We're not gonna do the love like whatever. I mean, we'll get there, but we're really just gonna deal with the stuff that people put in the comments. But when she comes home after being at the hotel and she says, I don't want you to get rid of him, I want better from him.
Yes.
As I reread it this time, I really was trying to figure out, like, who was better, Ezra or the Beast? I like who was better to her, because on the one hand, the Beast was attentive and present, and there was aftercare, and there was, watching her limits. Because even once, at the end of the third book, when she's pregnant and like being really careful, in their last time in the sandbox before the end of the book, not to hurt her and whatever, like the Beast understood the rules of BDSM, and that a good dom does not push their sub past where they should go. There are safe words. There are, there's protection. Even in the tub afterwards, there's conversation about what worked and what didn't work. The Beast was, I won't say open to her, but at least he was more sensitive to her. Where sometimes Ezra was closed off and cold, and she knew what to expect from the Beast more than she knew what to expect from Ezra.
See, that's what I was going to say.
Okay.
Right? Because my interpretation of that more than anything was, with the Beast, she understood once she got it, she got it. Right.
And when that tongue came across them teeth, she knew.
This makes sense to me. Right. And yet it was set aside, her dealing with her feelings of shame about the fact that she liked it and so on and so on. But she understood the rules of engagement. Whereas with Ezra, we consistently see, and this is where I gotta hold Lex accountable to a certain extent, right? Understanding that.
Just wait a minute. Watch it.
No, I understand. Look, I love them both. I love them both. But there were moments where Lex, because we have the benefit of being in her head, there were the moments where Lex pushed, and then the moments where she talked herself out of pushing. There were the moments where she clapped back at him, and then there were the moments she talked herself out of clapping back, right? And what I would say is that when she brought something, for the most part, there were a couple of exceptions, but for the most part, when she addressed something with him, he responded.
He did. So to me, it was in a gaslighty kind of way.
Well, I don't know if I agree with that entirely. I think there was a genuine, there were things that he didn't understand, but when she said, this is what I want from you, for the most part, he responded and gave her what she said she wanted from him, right? So I started getting frustrated as we get deeper into things, and that has happened a couple of times, but we've also seen Lex talk herself out of addressing certain things with him. And I'm like, okay, you're projecting onto him to a certain extent, because you're not doing this. You're not gun shy because you've addressed it with him and he has completely shot you down and ripped you to shreds, right? So now you're afraid of what the reaction is going to be. You're gun shy because you've got your baggage and all of the things that you've been through. And look, we take people how we find them, right? I'm not dismissive of that. But what I am saying is that there were one too many times for me where I was kind of like, Lex, like, you've signed on to this agreement with this man. You have the right to ask questions, right? You have the right to tell him you don't like certain things. You've done that. Stop talking yourself out of doing that, right? Because setting aside whether the agreement was made for love or not, like, you and this man made this adult arrangement with each other. So if there's stuff that you don't like, as he said to her, you got to tell me. Right. And she would kind of go back. Sometimes she would and sometimes she wouldn't. And that was not all on Ezra, is all I'm saying. I'm not saying that I blame Lex. It's not blaming. But what I'm saying is there was shared accountability in that lack of communication. I don't think it's fair to say it was all on Ezra, because I don't think it was all on Ezra.
I am struggling to say that I disagree, but I don't 100% agree.
That's fine.
So
I'm right and you're wrong. It's fine.
Oh, okay. When I stood in her shoes, especially in book 1, because after the whole thing with Bishop Jones, she wakes up and she thinks that he has left her, not just left the house, that he has left her, that one infraction was the end of it all. And I think it is somebody like him who is closed off and hard to read, and nobody's open book and a vault and all of these things, and constantly literally in control of his emotions and his just how rare it is for him to smile. All of these things that, and her saying the only time that you really knew he was happy when he was when his eyelashes, became visible, like really a stone, like just stone cold, except for in the pulpit. And even then he was not rearing back and hooping and hollering, what I'm saying?
Right.
And so for her, I don't know this guy, he pursues me. Before we marry, on 2 different instances, he blows my mind with just the slightest little flick of his hand. And we get married, and I'm every time I encounter him, I find out something else that I didn't know. From the private plane to the island, I just feel like the reason why I understood her growing in confidence with him was because not only was he a closed book, but his world was completely foreign to her, with the exception of his attire, just because she worked at Saks. But had she not worked at Saks, they wouldn't even have been able to meet there.
Correct.
And so I feel like those times where she did versus the times when she didn't was just about her growing in confidence. And because he was already supremely confident and comfortable in his skin and aware of all the angles except the ones that mattered sometimes, that's why I said it was a little bit gaslighty, because it's almost like when you bring up to your partner that there's something that you don't like, and they say, give me an example. Well, I don't have an example, but I'm telling you, you know what I'm saying? Or maybe I do have an example, but it's from, I can't remember the most recent time. Or they'll say, well, when? Do you want me to tell you, February 13th, 2008? Like, what are you asking me? And so in those instances where he would say, like, I'm trying to improve on my appeal. I've stayed in bed with you for 35 more minutes. What more do you want? In those moments, it was kind of like, you're hearing me, but you're missing the point. You can tell me back everything that I said, and you can follow the steps of what I asked for, but you're following the law and not the spirit.
But see, I also thought with that, and that's a perfect example, right? The staying in bed, right? We're also talking about 2 people who had never lived with someone of the opposite sex aside from family.
Yep.
Right. And there was this assumption on her. She had expectations, not assumption. She had expectations on how they would interact and engage in the house, right? He had different expectations. Neither one were wrong, but neither one communicated that, right? And so, again, it was, when she takes it personal, and he doesn't know that until she says something, and then he addresses it. But he's also like, well, I'm an introvert. Like, this has nothing to do with wanting you to feel, unwelcome or uncomfortable.
Right.
Like, this is me being
I
me.
just prefer my solitude. Yeah.
Right. Like, I'm not thinking about that I'm being dismissive of you or I'm treating you coldly. Like, and until you tell me that, how am I supposed to know? So that all I'm saying is they were not on equal footing.
No.
And I'm not saying that it was a 50-50 in terms of accountability, but what I am saying is that she has to take some accountability for some of the things that she did or did not say or express to him, right? Because he wasn't a mind reader. For as keyed in as he would be sometimes, right? As keyed in as he would be sometimes, he wasn't a mind reader. Right. And I wasn't bashing Lex, and I wasn't frustrated with Lex. But as I read it again this time, I was kind of like, all right, Lex. But I was like, Lex, I'm going to need you to, like, sis, you're going to have to, like, open your mouth. Like, you're going to have to say it, right? Because you know how to say it. You advocate on behalf of your clients. And that goes back to people who can advocate on behalf of others, but can't necessarily do it for themselves.
Yeah, but even from the very power.
Yes, but even from the very beginning, when she was like, I don't want to go on any more dates with you. I am done with this.
Right.
I've had enough. right? And he's like, what can I do? What? And she's like, I don't want to go on group dates anymore. I don't want to go on double dates anymore. And that stopped, right? So from the very beginning, I just felt like he was demonstrating that when she said to him, I don't like this, I don't want to do this, more often than not, he tried to be responsive to that. And I kind of felt like that sometimes got lost because she would stay in her head so much, right? That she would react and respond based on what was in her head, more so than, okay, the last time I said something to him, he reacted like this.
Now, all right. I'm not going to say I can see what you're saying, but I can see what you're saying.
That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. Because Lex also, she had a lot, it was a lot going on, but it was also,
and like I said, he was the one with the power. It's his house.
I understand, but we're adults, right? You made this agreement. And when you express to him, I don't like this, I like that, he was responsive. So I just feel like there's got to be some accountability. It can't all be, it can't all be, it's not equal. I'm not saying it's equal, but I am saying there's some accountability.
I will give you 95.5.
And see, I don't even want to get it. I wouldn't even do percentages because I can't even parse out in my mind what it was, right? I do think that Ezra was the bigger aggressor, and he carried greater fault. On that, you and I are in total agreement. I guess what I'm saying is that it shouldn't have taken, although I understand why she reacted the way that she did, it shouldn't have taken the explosion, right?
So let's go to the explosion before we go to the comments.
Okay. And the explosion itself was interesting because what she said in the explosion was not what I would have said in the explosion, right?
Me either.
So it was interesting that what was really sticking in her craw was not what I thought.
What did you think?
I mean, what I thought was the betrayal of knowing that he had, pressed the BDSM, knowing what had happened to her, right? And look, she does address that with him, but that's what I would have thought would have been the explosion, rather than I'm in love with you and you don't love me and I can't do this anymore. I got that too, but it was just interesting because I think I would have been a lot of, sick MFers. How dare you? Right.
especially when, and she says it perfectly. She talks about when they're at dinner in book 3, and she says, you knew what I had been through, and I made myself take it
because I thought you didn't know.
Because I thought you didn't know.
Right.
And I didn't want, Lex can stand up to anything. Lex can do anything. She can, and I didn't want to be, even at the beginning of book 2, after she tries to hit him, and she explains why and what was going on. And she says, but I want to try it again.
Yeah.
And one thing that I noticed this time that I don't know if I picked up before was, even in Miss Rima, she had been groomed to give love, but not get it in the way she wanted it.
Yes, correct. Yep.
And so with her parents, she gave love, but didn't get it back in the way she wanted it back. With Miss Rima, with who the crazy one, the one that is terrible and should be stabbed. Oh, she ended up with Peaches. What's her name? Nairi. I think Tosh. Is that how you say it?
I thought it was Tosh.
Okay. I think Tosh and Lily were the only two that were emotive and expressive to her and showing love and support.
Yes.
And Miss Rima on her wedding day, she did. And now, but then again, Miss Rima came all the way back when she said, be careful with her down there, and talked about, what it was like to see her in the hospital.
Yes.
And she said, she, pointing to her head, she thought, pointing to her crotch. She said she thought if she could get you here, she could get you here.
Yes.
And then pointed to her heart or to her head. And this idea that, you know, she put up with a lot because she thought that that's what you wanted and that was going to get her closer to you and for her to finally be with someone who would love her back in the way that she needed it.
Yes.
And so I was so in love with Miss Rima in that moment for really taking him to task.
Yes.
Because there was nobody else, even Bishop Jones, when he, after the apartment scene in book 1, you know, he gives him some advice, but Miss Rima is the one that is like, hey man, like, where you been at?
And Miss Rima also checked Lex as well.
She did.
Which I appreciated. When she's like, then teach him. When she's like, he doesn't know how to love me. And she says, then teach him.
Right.
And I was like, yes. Right. Like, this is not, stop behaving as if, you know, you've consigned yourself to this lifetime of just being a servant. It doesn't have to be that way. Yeah. But I understand. I'm mindful that Lex, that had to be a journey for Lex to understand that, right? And Ezra's behavior did not help. It didn't help. So
for both of them, it was a journey to understanding how to love the other person, which all relationships are. But I think that this one was extraordinarily complicated by his vocation and his temperament, and by her upbringing and life experience. Yeah, that they really were miles and miles and miles and miles apart.
Yes.
When they first met each other, and it and mind you, all of this happens in the space of a year.
Right.
And so it's completely understandable at the end where he like, you know, he's like, I got to take you away again because I done ruined this whole 365 days.
Right. Like, it's been a lot. It's been a lot. First year has been a lot.
This has been a lot. Okay. Go ahead.
You know, it kind of, I thought to myself in terms of like these blind spots with him, right? The fact that, and knowing how you feel about fictional therapists and how they irk your soul. But, you know, because I thought to myself, okay, Pastor, like, I respect the fact that you're not trying to tempt fate and have y'all, you know, you out here fornicating before the wedding day. So you're super speeding to the altar, which a lot of Christian couples do. But the fact that he knew certain things about her background, right? Not just the sexual assault, but just like the parent dynamic, you know, that her mother had mental health issues, all of that stuff. And that they were veritable strangers, right? And it never once occurred to him, we have to get to know each other. And it may be helpful if we do marital counseling to help us get to know each other. But it's that we've seen, you know, there are like shows. There was that like I'm blanking on the name of the show. It was a popular HBO show years ago. It was surrounding a therapist who, you know, was incredible. Yes, right. So he was incredibly talented and insightful with his patients, right? But his life was a hot mess, right? Just complete. And the irony of someone who could be not just education wise and credentials wise, but like truly gifted in terms of being able to counsel and provide therapy and help people have breakthroughs, but just blind as a bat in his own daggone life, right? And it's just like, brother, like, I mean, how, you know, and because they were strangers, right? They were strangers. And so in fairness to those who, you know, I think defend him and say, look, you know, he wasn't saying love because it wasn't love. And in the beginning it wasn't. And they both went into that eyes. Right. They went into that eyes wide open. Yeah. It was clearly a powerful, potent sexual and physical attraction to each other. He did not drive her crazy more than he seemed to intrigue and turn her on, where she was willing to see what this was about. They were strangers, right? And that first year, candidly, they were still dating because they were dating, but they were legally married. But they could not be engaging on the level that a husband and wife is truly engaging because they didn't know each other.
They didn't know each other.
Exactly. They did not know each other, right?
And neither one of them, she understood that and acknowledged that. He didn't. That's what she kept asking. I want to know you. I want to know you. Who are you? And he was like,
he was interpreting that as almost like life resume, right? And she's like, no, I want to know you and know you, right? And feel connected to you. And the minute she would start using language that sounded like it was going down that road, that was when he would be dismissive of, that man made up, thing about whatever,
hyper romanticized, antiquated notion, etc., fairy tale, etc. Mythical. I think that's the word he used.
Yes. Like, come on, Pastor.
But especially when, so especially when the way that he would talk about God's love and the intimacy that comes in that relationship, if that's your bag.
Yes.
But you couldn't see it over here. She crazy.
That's what I'm saying. Both like self-aware and then blind. Just like, Pastor, how? But I felt like that's why when you said that he had dealt with his relationship with his father, his relationship with his mother, like that had so tainted it for him.
I could see that.
Right. It had so tainted it for him. And I don't know that he even realized how deeply it had tainted things for him. Right. That he couldn't see how by withholding those parts of himself and not engaging with his wife, his other half in that way, that he was being dismissive and neglectful of his gift, which is why I feel like his evolution is so satisfying to watch, because you're like, yes, Pastor,
he finally gets it.
Yes.
God damn. Like,
I'm about to take out a billboard. Like, I'm about to buy TV.
Right.
Bills,
Absolutely.
I'm about to have a whole praise and dance team do a, performance
with the flags. With the flags. You gotta have the flags and the ribbons.
But he had to be humbled, right? And it is the reminder.
Thankfully.
There's that scripture that says, something along the lines of, man cannot handle too much praise lest he begin to think of himself as God, right? Something along those lines, right? And I'm sure you've seen it. We've all seen it. Ministers who've clearly, they really act like they got Jesus on the beeper, right? I mean, it's just, and how that can warp even hearts that came into it pure, but year in, year out, when you're having people just constantly fawning over you and treating you as if you were God, it is, I imagine, incredibly, incredibly difficult to hold on to that humility. And it's like he had the humility when it came to serving the people. He had the humility when it came to being in touch with his God and doing what he was called to do. But he didn't have that humility when it came to what should have been the most important person in his life.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
No,
I completely agree. Lord. And it's so rich though. Like that's why I love this series so much, is you could talk about it all day and not talk about all of it.
Yep.
There is something on top of something on top of something.
Yes.
Okay, let's see if we can segue to some of the prompts and comments. So equally yoked. That one came up a couple times. The importance of being equally yoked. Tell me your thoughts on that as it relates to Ezra and Lex.
I mean, it was a point well taken, right? Because we we were seeing it play out with this couple, but I think seeing what happens when you are unequally yoked, right? And look, I think people use different terms for it. So the biblical term is unequally yoked, but people say you're not compatible, you're not on the same page, you don't share the same values, right? And so I think, we see it play out in marriages where we're not on the same page about how we handle our money. We're not on the same page about children. Are we having them? When are we having them? How are we raising them? We're not on the same page about the expectations of me as a wife, you as a husband, and how that plays out in terms of how we interact with each other. What am I responsible for? What are you responsible for? How we interact with other people. So while I feel like typically when I hear that phrase, it was always growing up in the context of a believer being with a non-believer, right? But I feel like as an adult, that phrase and that reality, you could have two believers that are still unequally yoked, in my opinion, the way I define it, right? Where you're not on the same page. That is, because I feel like that is a more inclusive way of describing it, instead of it just being, as I was raised, talking about your spiritual walks.
So the reason people talk about being equally yoked is because of how you used to yoke oxen.
Yes.
So it's like a wooden thing that you put on the oxen, but you can't yoke an ox with a donkey. They different height. They got different. It ain't gonna work. You can't yoke an ox with a horse. You have to have two oxen the same size with this wooden thing together so that they can plow the field or do whatever they're supposed to do. That's why it's important to be equally yoked, because if you're not, then you ain't gonna get no work done. Now, I say all that to say, just remember, it's not churched, because I'm out. But when I was in, I knew. So I'm telling y'all what it is. Mm-hmm. So, but I won't, I'm trying to decide if they were unequally yoked. That's why I can't complete the sentence. Because
that's fair. That's fair. That's fair.
I think
in some ways they were, and in other ways they weren't.
Thank you.
Yes, and I agree.
And the spirituality was the least of it, because she didn't need to be, to his point, and this is something that he acknowledged, she didn't need to be churched to be right for him, and not just in the bedroom. But I think that she had aside from trying to learn and be approved of by this man, who holds all the cards, or at least 9 of the 10 cards. I think that she had a wisdom and a worldliness and an awareness about her that can't be poo-pooed just because she didn't grow up going to Sunday school.
She embodied the love of Christ.
Absolutely.
More than
he did sometimes.
But more than like everybody aside from Mother Snell, right? I mean, everybody in church, as far as I was concerned, and the music ministers, other than the one who wanted to get paid, right? I mean, so I agree with you, but that's why I say I don't love that phrase, because to me it always implicates just the one facet,
right?
And making it seem like, well, if we're both quote unquote spiritually on the same page, that ain't got nothing to do with how we manage our money. That ain't got nothing to do with like
because how many of us know couples where they're in church every week and they got the Bible is worn through, they can read you chapter and verse, and they follow in certain tenets of the church. And so he the head and he in control, and he ain't got a bit more skill set and experience to lead them. But because he has a Y chromosome, let me get off my soapbox. Anyway, so I feel like emotionally she had more to offer than he did, and kind of opened him up to that world. Spiritually, of course, he did, but to the point that she made about him being blind, and he comments on this himself. He doesn't think to ask her if she's been baptized.
Right,
sir.
Right,
sir. Your first call.
Right.
But anyway, so
but the flip side of that, she didn't think to ask him when his birthday was.
Yes, you right about that.
And I was just kind of like, y'all. This is like,
it's getting weird.
This is like, by the third conversation we done had this. So what's your sign?
What's your sign? What's your favorite color?
And even if you don't ascribe to the astrology, that naturally leads to, well, my birthday is.
Exactly.
So I was like, y'all are killing me.
Shout out to the Leos.
Because what in the world? How y'all, you ain't even asked when the man's birthday is? What?
Right. And I'm with you there. So when you say that it's not, you don't know the mathematics on it, as they say, in terms of who, how much weight he should carry versus how much weight she should carry, although we agree that he should carry more. I'm seeing what you're saying, and I'm more comfortable partially saying that I'm seeing what you're saying.
Yeah, that's all, because some of those things, some of those things were, because, another example I thought of, right, where I understood, they both had touchy subjects that,
Yeah.
in fairness, I don't know how you preemptively or proactively say, so listen, I want you to know, when she told him that she could not have children, right? I understood why she didn't just, and because that I was gang raped, and like, because that's not one of those things that you just kind of lay it out there, like, because I fell when I was 9 and
right,
hurt
and some
myself,
people never tell it.
exactly, right? The flip side of that, and they're not equal. Let me say that first. They're not equal. But the example on his side that I thought of, with the benefit of now having read it several times, the nurses ministry thing.
Yes.
Because I was hot like fish grease in the beginning, right?
Yes.
First couple of times I read out, hot like fish grease. I don't want to hear nothing. There's no way she should have been blindsided. But I'm thinking to myself, so how do you tell your wife that your mama and daddy, these pillars of this church, this community, got a whole open marriage situation, and you suspect other folks got like almost like church legalized, Secret Service, whole service, as Sean said it, right? Or something like that. I mean, a whole Secret Service, which I love that phrase. I thought, well, when Mary and Bishop came to their house for brunch that first time, and Ezra makes clear to his father, like, you're not going to just, we're not doing this, right? That could have been a moment, but that's right? How do you just proactively share that, right?
Yeah. It's embarrassing.
When I think about how he could have prevented that from happening, and I'm like, I don't know how you just bring that up in casual conversation, that your parents got a whole third person in the marriage, and these, like, because they were, right? Because remember, Lex says, as she's remembering the experience in her mind, one of the things she said to Marva was, I can't believe that Bishop is okay with this, or something like that.
Right.
And Marva's like,
girl, sit down.
And then here come Mary strolling in, right?
Right.
So,
I think too of that. I think Ezra I think he underestimated Precious, or certainly Marva. I think Marva had stayed out of his way, and Precious was careful not to rankle him.
That's right.
And I think he never in a million years thought that they would do that. And
Agree,
then the
1,000%.
moment they did, he said, "Oh, let me fix it. Let me fix it. Don't worry, because I work here now."
Yes, I agree with you 1,000%. He definitely underestimated them, and he had to learn, right? Because it was like, oh, this is how we getting down. I got something for y'all, right? And it was unfortunate that that Lex had to just be caught in that, but I don't think he would have pulled that trigger, right, the way that he did, because he was kind of like, I suspected, but I didn't really know. And he clearly thought, in terms of the hierarchy of things that he needed to focus his attention on in this transition of taking over the church, that was lower on the list.
Yeah.
And
for worse or for worse, what was going on between his parents and Marva and all of that, also not wanting to do too much ruffling because of what the outcome or what the fallout would have been on Mary.
Yes.
And so to know about it and to suspect it, but to stay away from it, as long as, when I speak to my mother, she's okay. When I speak to my mother, she says she got a handle on it. I don't, she a grown woman, whatever that is, however you do that dance around, because it's about when you get to the age that you see that your parents are people too.
Yes.
And they make their own decisions, some decisions that they would never have let you make.
Yes.
And so I think for him, he and Mary, it was about, she a grown woman. And as much as I would love for her to give me the go ahead, you know what I mean? This is her life and these are her choices. And Mary's eyes were open to that. And I think, but to the point that you were making about how do you open the door to such a conversation, we get into that with Natalia.
Yes.
And we get into that with Precious, that Lex has to pull the truth out of him.
Yes.
She's no dummy.
Yes.
She knows what it is. She just don't know exactly what it is.
Yes.
You know what I mean? I could tell you something stink. I just don't know what it is that stinks.
Yes.
And and she has to, with the case of Precious, pull it out of him fairly early on, and then Precious continues to, kind of tiptoe along the periphery until she realizes that she really got to go, and then Lex flip a wig back. But with Natalia, it's not until after Mary dies and she's finally like, tell me what it is.
Yes.
And so I'm of two minds about this. On the one hand, I understand him not saying anything because of what he says to her when they first are in the sandbox is, I couldn't have told you this because you wouldn't have married me.
Right.
And that's my problem with him not giving her the benefit of informed consent.
Yes.
To me, you have to take the risk of the other person not being interested.
That's right.
But you got to tell them what it is.
Well, but, and I thought this was where that was another one of those examples of Ezra being like, well, this is the woman that God sent to me, so it will all work itself out. And it's like, brother, it's not gonna magically work itself out.
No,
you got to work it out. Okay,
right.
Like it's not going to just magically be okay.
And if you believe that God sent her, then you got to believe that she can handle it.
Yes.
And
so
like
you're missing a piece. You're missing
a
piece.
There was a very interesting lack of faith.
Yeah.
As it related to that. Like he was so excited to have her and so afraid of losing her that he didn't do some of the things he needed to do to keep her.
Yeah.
And
can we go back to...
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say, going back to the Mary point, but let's remember, he also resented Mary for not checking it, right?
Yeah,
so that was part of their distance as well. It was you're a grown woman, you've allowed this to go down, and there's only but so much I can say about that. But know that this affects our relationship, because I am not okay with this, and I'm never going to be okay with this. And I don't care how okay you get yourself with this. So I would just say, on the one hand, he recognized his mother was a grown woman making grown woman decisions, but he resented the fact that she let that rock as long as it did. Because I forget which one of them said it. I think Mary acknowledges it, and he doesn't use the word resentment, but I think Mary might have used, either she used the word resentment, or she used something that was synonymous with it, that basically said he resented me for it. He didn't understand it, and he would fight with Sylvester about it. But, and when he's reflecting on his parents' marriage, he's like, my mother's decided that eternity at all costs, right? The marriage has to last the eternity at all costs. And he just couldn't get with it, and he had made it clear to her, don't you dare impart any of your quote unquote wisdom on marriage to my wife. We don't want none of your wisdom. Right. So
yeah, that was a moment. That was a moment between and it's taken me back to this idea of let me be careful. How dangerous faith can be sometimes when you won't interrogate it.
Fair.
And I just
Absolutely
feel like I felt, especially when Mary died and the way Mary died, the fact that Precious was there and Ezra was not, they didn't call him until the last minute. The fact that, Sylvester doesn't want Lex in the room anywhere around. I mean, it was just a heart-wrenching scene. Him singing to her, it was just, whoo, child.
And that was again, kind of going back to your point about realizing that your parents are people, right? They are not these infallible, mythical beings. They are fallible, flawed people. And knowing that Mary had been battling her cancer alone and had chosen not to say anything.
Yes.
That two of her girlfriends knew, but understand why her husband didn't, but I also understand why she didn't share with her son.
Yeah.
Because of the dynamic of their relationship and him having to find a way to make peace with that, right? Which is a bitter pill to swallow.
It is. Because I didn't want that for her. And let me say this too, it could be a superficial understanding to say that she was immature in her faith, and didn't interrogate what God was truly asking of husbands and wives, and that she was making she was also doing a letter of the law versus the spirit of the law, in terms of tolerating what she did from Sylvester, especially when she understood what a real man was in her father. And so to take less than that from Sylvester was gross. But at the same time, we all know faithful women who make a decision and trust God to see them through it. And I didn't want that for her. I still don't understand why she did it, but at the same time, I respected her choice.
You know what's interesting is that I thought that her spirituality, her faith, her religion, whichever, right, was one consideration. But I didn't actually think it was the most powerful for her in terms of staying. I thought ultimately that she had this man, she had her son, and it was kind of like, it was what it was. It was like, I mean, okay, I guess they have this thing between them, and I guess I'm just going to deal with it. So to be clear,
but where did Marva fall
religion,
into that though?
No. To be clear, I guess what I'm saying, her religion absolutely was one of the considerations. But what I felt I was getting from Mary, I felt like we could have taken the religion out of it to a certain extent. And Mary sounded to me like, I married this man. I wanted this man. I got this man, despite the fact that I knew he was, silver tongue devil and all that other good stuff, right? He gave me my son. And they always had this strange, it was what it was.
It's gonna have to be more than that for me. Because
I understand.
She could have left him a long time ago. She could have stayed with Ezra and nobody would have never known.
Correct. I understand.
So like, why let Marva throw it in your face if you don't have some deeper reason? And maybe she didn't, but I can say that I would not have suffered such without a deeper reason.
I understand. And I also think that she was coming from a generation where you stayed, right? And part of that was religion, and part of that was just, that was what you did. So maybe it was so interwoven. Maybe it is harder. Maybe I'm oversimplifying. It is harder to take the religion out of it. Cause I just felt like Mary, when she explained staying, it was, I wanted this. I wanted this man. I wanted to hold on to this man, and I was going to keep the piece of him. And then I had my son, and it was what it was, because it was clear that her father, a bishop, was like, why are you settling for this? Right. So it wasn't as if her father, who she revered, was saying, well, you got to stay, because that's not the implication she was giving us, right? The implication she gave us was her father did not want her to stay with Sylvester. And she was kind of like, nah, I'm good.
Which is why, Mary, why? But okay.
I agree. That was very interesting. It was very interesting, but folks have their reasons for, sticking around, and then, the secrecy, and deciding that she didn't want them to know. And when they're out to lunch, right, and he says to her, mother, like, what's really good? Like, what's going on here? Right. When he finally like presses her, and she's like, are you asking as my pastor, as my son? And he's like, it don't matter, I'm asking. She's like, well, I ain't got to tell you nothing about nothing.
Right.
And so when he's battling with his guilt, but it was like, you weren't going to know until she wanted you to know. Right. So that's why Mary wasn't this like, poor little lamb Mary.
No,
Mary,
she wasn't.
Right. She was decided in how she chose to chart her course.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to give her the respect of saying that she was decided in how she decided to chart the course of her marriage as well.
And her illness.
And yes. And the illness. Clearly.
That was also on her terms.
Clearly.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm thinking like maybe after a while she said, Marva, girl, just go. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
You can have him, girl. I've been over here because he is,
Yes.
and so
I
all of
think
what
so.
like whatever it is that he get out of you, that means he won't come to me for it. So,
I think so. Like, because it
and
was
yeah,
almost this like she wasn't like, I felt like in her conversation with Lex, right? It clearly at some point it was, oh, poor Mary. But by the time Lex meets her and they have that conversation, Mary seems just kind of like, girl, you know, like it is what it is. Like I don't know if it started before she came up or when they get, I mean, even how matter of fact she was about questioning whether Precious was her husband, right? It was like, how can you be so like matter of fact about that? But at that point, Precious and Ezra are in their late 30s.
right,
So she done
right,
had 3 decades
yeah,
to just, it is what it is.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I can see that.
You know?
She was a complex character, and
Yes.
probably of anybody, if like to want to sit down and have a conversation with out of the book, it probably would be her, because there was a lot that was unanswered for me about her and her choices.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I'm interested in her like reasoning and her backstory.
Mm-hmm.
What I will say is that who Sylvester reminded me of is Janie's first husband in Their Eyes Were Watching God. And how he wouldn't wash his feet when he got into bed, and he wouldn't this and he wouldn't that, and she just reminded me of Logan, and how he just reminded me of Logan, and just gruff and disinterested, and just, I don't want to be around you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
He was slimy.
He wasn't
slimy.
right. And it's worth discussing, although I don't recall that it was mentioned, and I had to read a little faster than I wanted to this time because the podcast recording snuck up on me. But he was over that church for many, many years, one of the largest and most influential churches of the area.
Yes.
I would assume nationally, if not internationally known.
Yes.
And probably could preach his tail off, but a hoe for show. And like, which is why it's so interesting to me that people in the early in reviews didn't make the connection between pastors or preachers, whatever their gender, also being sexual beings. But it is notorious for preachers to have multiple families. I mean, it used to be the whole front row was the preacher, his wife, and then all of the other women and children.
But I think it was less, and it's interesting, right? How, I think this is kind of a phenomenon, particularly in our community, right? Where it's like, no, I'm fine with you talking about sex, but now you talking about, and I'm even fine with you talking about
alternative lifestyle,
freaky, right? But now you talking about alternative lifestyle, and now I just can't.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be interesting to, it would be interesting to hear, just for Love to give a little bit more context on that, since obviously she's, this book has been out for years, and it's funny, it's saying Rita's like, oh, Lo, we coming back to this, and I'm like, well, there's a lot of newbies, right? Like, I'm like, you read it when it first came out,
right.
But there are lots of folks who are just discovering, right, or who discovered Ezra within the last 2 to 3 years, not when he first, hit the presses. But I think it was the alternative lifestyle piece that for some people seemed to be maybe contrary to that of a pastor, where I was like, I don't see them at odds at all, right? Pleasure is pleasure. And also there are things that you choose to explore with your spouse. Again, I just don't believe that Jesus is micromanaging, like, so a missionary, no doggy, no reverse cowgirl, no, like, wait, come on now, right? I just don't, but it that kind of is what it is. And I think with Sylvester, I think it's his analytics guy, Marcus, who kind of makes the point that, like, and Lex kind of says this as well in her head, right? That with all due respect to Bishop Bishop was more old school, right? So Bishop did a lot of hooping and hollering and screaming and that old time. And knowing that he was coming up from North Carolina, that makes a lot of sense, right? Whereas Ezra was more of a teacher, right? And I grew up in a church with a pastor who was more of the teaching style, and so I can remember when I would visit other churches where they were more in the hoop and holler, I would cut through that pretty quickly and be like, but where's the message? Like, what do you, what am I supposed to walk away from this from? Like, I enjoy the stomping and the singing and all that. What am I supposed to walk away from your sermon with? And it reminds me, I just saw something, it might've been yesterday, right? Kirk Franklin, I guess, I don't know if it was on a podcast or interview or whatever, but he was saying that a lot of millennials have walked away from the church because he said something like, we showed them our scriptures, but didn't show them our scars. And there was someone who commented, I saw this on Facebook, and it was a woman, and she said, no, I saw plenty of scars. I just didn't see content and hear word that I thought was pertinent and relevant to how I actually live my life. That's why I stopped coming. And I was like, that's what I think it is, right? So kind of coming it back to the book, both Marcus and Lex in her own mind, she's like, when I'm listening to Ezra, I hear things that I can actually apply to my life, and I see how it applies to my life, right? And Marcus kind of makes the point when they do the handover, he's like, listen, but for Ezra,
right,
Trent and Stenton and Raji would not be writing them big old tithe and checks, okay? Right? They're drawn to this young, dynamic, charismatic, thoughtful teacher, right? Not just the stomping and the screaming and the sweating and
the fire and the brimstone, and get right church and let's go home.
and I think that kind of boils down to is you do need to find what speaks to you, because for some people that's exactly what they want, right? And for others, they are looking for the teaching. Right.
I think it does come down to why you go.
Yep.
Some people go to church for community. Some people go to church for life lessons. Some people go to church for the music. Some people go to church. I mean, some people do go to church for the spectacle. There's a church not too far from where I live where every Sunday you would think it was like the Grammys or the BET Awards. Like there is a light show and smoke and somebody coming out the ceiling and the praise team is the best you ever heard. And they use just 17 different Aretha Franklins on the stage. And I mean, like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And then there are, so I think everybody goes for a different reason. And I think people get in trouble is the wrong word, but I think where you have a hiccup is where you can't figure out why you go.
Yep.
So when you can't answer that question, you're going to run into some trouble.
Yeah.
You're going to run into some trouble.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we should do 2, because I think we said we were going to break Ezra out, because I do want to go into some of the scenes from book 2 and book 3 and why I think she should have made him suffer much longer than she did. But let's do 2 more questions and then we will reconvene next week. Does that work?
Okay.
All right. So if I was to randomly pick one, let me pick a good one. Okay. Someone said for us to discuss the chemistry between Ezra and Lex. What are your thoughts there?
I mean, the chemistry jumped off the page.
Immediately,
right? Because for all of her timidity in certain areas and in certain ways, Lex was probably one of the few people from the door who wasn't overly deferential.
Yeah.
Right? Who wasn't afraid to speak her mind. Right. So I'm again acknowledging that dichotomy with Lex, because Lex had moments where she was like, and then she had those moments where she was in her head. Right.
So like one of my favorite Lex moments of the whole series is right before she goes to Nari's bachelor trip.
Yes.
And she says 2 moments. One of them is when she's leaving him for the first time.
Yes.
And she says something smart to him as he's walking away from the table, and he says this after I just preached or something like that. And then my other favorite moment of her is when in I don't want to say Puerto Rico, but it was somewhere, and he shows up after preaching in Atlanta, and she says, "Did you miss me?" And he refuses to answer, and then he says to her, "Did you miss me?" And she says, "I guess we'll never know." And so in those two moments, she gives him a little bit of a taste of his cryptic medicine.
Yes.
And it was just enough of a clap back to have him standing there looking dumb, which he needed to be standing there looking dumb a whole lot of times.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Those were two moments when I was like, that is right, girl.
And I think I just kind of, it was moments like that where I was like, Mama, you have it in you. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. You don't have to tiptoe. No, you're a warrior. Come on. Right. Because
Lex is a warrior. You're right.
Going back to that point, the when he wouldn't say that he missed her. And I was just kind of like, really?
Oh, but there are so many of those.
Like, are you kidding me?
Yes.
Do you like you are so dumb.
Yes.
Right? You sound so dumb right now. You done got your tail on the plane. The fly, boy. Go have a seat in the corner.
Go have a seat in the corner. Even
face the wall.
Yes. Even in book 1, when she is drunk, coming to the lunch with him and Bishop Jones, and he's in the car mad and driving home, and he says, the church was the least of my concern. I was worried about her. And he talks about this feeling that came up in him that he couldn't identify.
Yes.
And but he also says, but I wouldn't tell her that.
Right.
And so in the beginning, all of these moments where he calls, and that's why I really wanted to stab him sometimes because, and y'all know I'm quick with the blade, because there were so many times when he could have expressed something to her, but chose not to, under the guise of training her. But in the Dobbs, and that's why I was really vacillating between who treated her better, Ezra or the Beast, because when you are somebody's Dom, it is only in the, not only, but the times that training piece happens in the context of that kind of play. But outside of that, you don't necessarily treat them that way unless you agree to take the play out into quote unquote the real world, because you do end up in a situation like her, where she wasn't sure where she stood with him, yet she found herself completely yielding to someone who refused to yield to her. And so that's why it wasn't until she left him that he says, I want to submit to you.
Yes.
Because he understood at that point that that's what it was going to take to make her feel like she was a part of your life.
Yes.
And it took you all this time, and she's about to spit in his face and about to hit him, like she's doing all of what she knows to do when she's backed into a corner. But it just took him forever and a day to figure it out, which is strange to me. But I guess, you know what, let me say this. This is something that's coming to me as we're talking. If he had never done this in the context of a relationship, he wouldn't know that.
Right.
He would know how to do it if he's in India at a sex club, and we all know what it is. And so we all just fall into our various roles.
Yes.
But to do it with a wife.
Exactly.
Is a completely different dynamic.
Exactly. And, you know, one point I wanted to make, just kind of taking us quickly back to, you know, being unequally yoked, is if you don't know how to compromise, if you don't have practice in compromising. I've had conversations with girlfriends who are single and they've never lived with anyone, or it's been a long time since they've lived with anyone, and the self-awareness that they are very, very, very settled and comfortable exactly how things are. Right. And the challenge that it would be to begin sharing their space with someone. Right.
Almost impossible.
Yeah. Because it's one thing, you know, we grow up with siblings and sharing space and so on and so on. You go to college, whatever that experience is or not, or when you first start working, unless you can afford to have your own apartment, you got a roommate, whatever. But when you've gotten to the point financially and in your career where you can have your own space and you have it, and then you spend the next decade or two and it's just your space and just you. right? The notion of having to share the space and the compromise that comes along with that. And we're just talking about sharing the physical space, right? Forget about the compromise of
emotional space.
Yes.
Telling stories, being vulnerable.
And he had zero experience doing that.
And was an only child.
She, on the other hand, was used to
she was always
compromising, right? Always giving her last. And
even to Kima, was a little girl named Kima.
Yes.
In the community center.
Yes.
And Baby came in there acting the ass.
Yep. And Baby Noel. Yep. So it's all of that where you're seeing this man who he's never had to do this before. And he done bypassed, right? He's like, oh Lord, you done answered my prayer. Praise God. My wife is here. And then just completely blew past the other part of the agreement, right? So, all right, now take care of this. Take care of this gift. Not just the practical everyday needs, but take care of this gift.
Right.
And it had to be her both leaving him and then the blind side of Mary's death that really just, it broke him down in the best ways possible, right? It made him a better man in every way, I thought.
I think we talked about this with Lou too. It was definitely a beauty for ashes moment.
Yes. And you know, so Kai, I'm glad that you mentioned Lou, and I'm mindful that we're going to continue our conversation on Ezra next week. But again, going back to your point about emotionally unavailable men, right? Because we knew that Ezra had, at least I knew, and I viewed Ezra as always having potential because we were in his head.
Yeah.
Right. So even when he was frustrating me, some of the other thoughts, I was like, okay, there's the potential there. But your point, always an excellent point, right? And well taken, that's not how it goes in real life. And the danger of someone like an Ezra is if you're dealing with someone that is giving you outwardly just enough to say, there's the potential there. I can crack this nut. I can crack this nut. While there are also clearly red flags there, right? We don't typically, we've seen where that does not play out in the beautiful happily ever after that Love Belvin gave us, right? We've seen, you know, girlfriends, maybe family members that years that they cannot get back on someone who gave just enough glimmers of something. But boy, it was red flag after red flag after red flag, and the years just kept ticking off the calendar.
Yes, and so we can go to this because this was one of Sean Chadwick's prompts. Because what she says is how women like alphas in fantasy, but don't necessarily want them in real life.
Yes.
And just in general, what do you think about alphas? And then she goes into men being a protector, provider, lover, teacher, friend, etc. So I think I shared before that I don't read a lot of alphas. I think Love Belvin might be the only. That's not true, because like, you know, Jay Shari writes alpha, but I don't. My catalog is still narrow. I'm still growing with the people that I read, but most of the people that I read, I like Ashley Nicole, who I just finished binging her. Like, she don't really write alphas, so I had not read a lot of alphas. Love Belvin's probably the one, and Jay Shari of reading and Kima B with the most, but I can't stand an alpha. I feel like I understand why it is interesting and intriguing, but I don't. In Joan series, but to me, and maybe it is because of the truth of real life. It's like when you see something shining off in the distance and you think it's a quarter, and you get over there and it's a piece of gum wrapper.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah,
or a piece of foil, like. Yep. And how always the story for alphas is bending toward balance.
Yeah.
Bending away from being emotionally stunted and closed off and unavailable over to a place of emotional balance. And I don't have any problem with men leading. I don't have any problem with men being in charge. I am grateful when my husband be in charge of something, because I'm in charge all day long. So when I come home and he say, we about to do such and such, great. Right. when he say, I booked the ticket and I already got it straight, or so-and-so called, but I handled that, God bless you.
Right.
I don't want my brain to be on all the time. That's exhausting. That's how Black women get heart disease, dis-ease. That is why Black women get heart disease, because we be doing the most with no help. But with Ezra, him and Rhett are probably the alphas that I had the most affinity for. But I still feel like he was a bully in the beginning.
He was.
And I feel like
I agree with that.
It's not fair to ask women to grow a man up by taking his abuse.
Yes, agree.
And so I always struggle with the man having the benefit of potential when she got to be ready to carry her water and his water until his potential is realized.
Yeah.
And so I feel like to some degree, it was a very painful object lesson for Lex and a lesson that she had learned many times and been burned by, and was just hoping that this would be the first time that she didn't get burned. And I think in the early days, she didn't feel burned by it because he did, enlarge her territory.
Right.
You know what I mean?
She didn't have feelings for him.
But also he alleviated a whole lot of her very pressing problems.
Yes, he did.
He was Boaz to her, you know what I mean? Like, he came through in the clutch, like at literally the last minute, because what were they going to do if he didn't? What were she and Ms. Remy going to do if he didn't show up?
Correct.
And so, and like the story goes, he let them glean in the field. But anyway, I feel like alphas I don't like the benefits. Alphas get all the benefits and none of the price, unless the woman makes them pay. And rarely does she make him pay long enough, and rarely does he pay as much as she did.
I think I agree with all of that. And I think that, the point is well taken of what you enjoy in fiction. It wouldn't necessarily be your cup of tea. Just because I enjoy reading about it, doesn't mean that's how I want to live. Because part of this is being self-aware, right? And understanding who you are and being like, that sounds good, but you see the way my personality's set up, that wouldn't really work for me.
Right.
And two, it works because we're in the person's head.
Yes, thank you.
So we are able to read and see what's motivating them. And the danger in the real world is you don't have that. Right. And so, and you've said before, what is the phrase that you use, right? About that there are a lot of men who want the title, right, but don't know how to do it. They don't know how to actually lead. They want the respect and the submission of authority and the authority of a leader, but they don't want the responsibility of being a leader, right? It's a lot more responsibility than it is, I'm in charge, do what I say. And so I feel like this is for many of us who are career women, have, are deep enough in the journey of learning how to be comfortable in our skin. The journey of loving ourselves.
Yeah.
And alpha women are much better alphas. Good. Yeah, an alpha sounds good. But for a lot of us, there are a certain point in our lives, it's like,
yeah, I'm not doing this with you.
Yeah, because I can't be in your mind and I can't, intuit your motivations. And I'm not going to invest the most precious commodity, which is time.
There you go.
Trying to figure it out. Maybe when I was younger, I would have given you years. I'm not doing that at this stage of my life.
Yeah. So something that I teach about at work and other things, etc., is the ladder of inference. And so the ladder of, have you heard of that?
Mm-mm.
Okay. So the ladder of inference is it's about the guessing game that we play or other people play with us based on limited information.
Okay.
So an example of that is Adrian didn't text me back. So that's the event. Adrian didn't text me back. The next step is, well, I could go any number of ways. Oh, maybe she's busy. Or I could go to maybe her phone is next to her. Or I could go to she's mad at me and she don't want to be my friend no more.
Yes.
And so then when you text me back, I take too long to text you back because I picked she's mad at me and don't want to be my friend no more.
Mm-hmm.
And so from there, now you're wondering, well, why the hell it take her so long to get back to me? And so then you take it a little higher. You get to the next rung. And then so maybe that means that you're not inviting me to brunch, or you invite me as an afterthought. And so then I don't come, or I decide to come later, or I come without a gift. And then we go high, escalating higher and higher and higher, simply because I misread the first event. And so what frustrates me about this, the alpha phenomenon in real life, which is why I struggle with it in fiction, is because women go the other way. When the man sent her a text message, oh, he loves me. And then based on that, just one event, which is the minimum he could do, he sent 50 good morning text messages. But just because you got one of them, you think you special. But every other thing he does to you, you attach it to, well, he don't mean it because, and maybe he just had a hard day.
Yeah.
And maybe that, we do all of this excusing and moving around to keep from having to admit that he is a terrible person and is not into me the way I'm into him.
Yeah.
And so with alphas, if you don't have the benefit, like you're saying, of that internal monologue, then you're guessing. You're just constantly guessing and inferring and hoping. And like you said, you can do 10 years and 2 kids with a nigga that way.
Yes, child. And
never get your time back. And so it's wonderful in books, like you're saying, because we read romance and we know that it must be happily ever after if you're gonna follow the rules, or happy for now. Mm-hmm. But I think it's just a dangerous phenomenon to romanticize for people who don't understand that these are not life lessons that you should be carrying into your life.
Right. Right.
Right. Don't be looking for no Ezra. And require people to be transparent in their thinking with you.
Yes. Bingo. That's the key right there, right? Because to your point, the ladder keeps going because there is a lack of communication.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And so if there's a lack of communication, then both of our imaginations will continue to run wild.
Exactly.
And the reality is both, I think, through with aging, but more so experience, you hope that you get to a certain point where, not to say you're necessarily a master at it, but you begin to learn the hard way that how disastrous it is to simply not say anything and not ask questions, right? Like, but I feel like I certainly had to get burned by that a couple of times. I was like, oh yeah, this strategy is not a good one. It's not successful, right? And then of course we know people who every thought they have, right, is coming out their mouth, and the question, and that's a different journey for those people of understanding that there is a benefit to being thoughtful of how you ask, right? How you put things and
keeping some things close to the vest.
Yes. So yeah, it is. I think this is definitely one of those. One of the other things that I, kind of speaking of tropes that are adorable or attractive in fiction, but very dangerous in the real world, is the whole he's mean to me because he doesn't know how to deal with his feelings.
Yes, honey.
Right. So, and that's that myth that we perpetuate with little boys, how little boys behave towards little girls, or he hits you because he likes you, and the danger of that. Right. And so, and listen, I've thoroughly enjoyed that enemies to lovers.
Absolutely.
When it's wonderfully done and it's entertaining and you're like, oh, hard eyes all over the place. Right. But I am mindful as an adult woman how dangerous that is. Because
it's
some
cute
people
when the couple's not in danger.
Exactly. In your head, in fiction, where to your point, if they're following the rules, you are getting a happily ever after, a happy for now, healthy, right? They're somehow going to arrive at a healthy place, not some toxic place where you're like, Lord, y'all don't need to be together because this is a mess.
Right.
So yeah, right. It just, but I think kind of circling all the way back to the question about the chemistry. their chemistry leapt off the page,
Oh
and
yeah.
it was authentic. And listen, he was clearly drawn to her. As he gets to know more about Lex, he's saying, well, the fact that she wasn't raised in the church was attractive, but like the moment they see each other,
Yes,
it's like he was hit with a lightning bolt, right? Because we know that Ezra is a gentleman. So as we get to know him better, we're like, the only explanation for him letting this woman be sprawled out at his feet and not immediately moving was because he was like, oh Lord, after 7 years.
Right. Here she is.
Right.
At my feet, no less.
Literally at my feet. I am stunned into stupidity. That's the only way.
To the point where he crouched down and looked directly into her face.
He still examined her. Clinical, like they were in the lab. He's like, look at this amazing specimen.
Yes. Like she dropped out of the sky just for him. With boxes, with gifts.
Right. Like she might as well have fallen from the clouds the way that he reacted, right? It was kind of like this. Like
with a sign on her forehead.
Right. Like, oh my God, she's here, right? So it just that leapt off the page. And it's like, I think if we weren't getting the benefit of Lex's inner monologue, we would have just had, oh, okay, she gives as good as she gets.
No,
if
she
you
was
think
struggling.
about that.
Yeah, you're right.
She was struggling, but we knew she was struggling because we were in her head. But in terms of the way she was interfacing with him.
Right.
You would have said she is giving as good as she gets.
True. I agree with you. And I think too, I loved how he couldn't get enough of her. Yeah. So some of what I enjoy most about romance is the person's thought about the other person. And I loved that, even when she did something that should have made him angry, he just couldn't get over his attraction to her and his growing affection for her. That I think he called it at some point. He says, I'm very fond of her or something, because he don't know he in love with us.
Right.
But also I appreciated how well Love wrote that her body was not her own. And so he talks on the plane the first time they go, when they're going to their honeymoon, I don't want to do something to you that would render you unstable. But that's exactly what he did. And she didn't get back on solid ground until they had a leveling moment around, what is our relationship going to be? Not how are we going to fuck? And she says that, I know how you like to fuck, but I don't know nothing else. It wasn't until he says, she leaves and he says, let me submit to you. And he really begins to understand that she is his partner and he has to treat her that way. But until then, her mind and her body and her heart were constantly at war.
Yes.
And I think Belvin really illustrated that artfully, because I was like, girl, I wouldn't leave either. The house is beautiful. He done bought you a Jaguar. He knows what to do with his dick, but then at the same time, I got so many questions. It's like I'm living in a glass cage of emotion, as I say. You know what I mean? Like with her, it was like, where do we go from here? Like, what am I supposed to tackle or explore or be mad about or address first?
Right. No, it was a lot, right? And her going back and forth with herself about the fact that she enjoyed what they were doing, but was like, this is wrong. I shouldn't be enjoying this. And that going back and forth kind of reminded me of, if you grew up in the church, but you had sex before marriage, you being me grew up in the church and I started having sex before marriage, and you're dealing with that guilt of, oh, this feels so good. Oh, but it's so wrong. Oh, but it feels so good. Right. And kind of like, is Jesus watching? Like, is he?
No, child, I had to compartmentalize it.
And so as she's kind of warring with herself about that, right?
Yes.
I mean, I understood why Lex was very much in her head. She had a lot going on. And but for us being in her head, she would have simply appeared to us the way she appeared to everyone else, right? Which was warrior, put together, give her last, passionate, stunning, poised, down to earth, cares for the community, all of those things, right? So it was, we had the inside baseball
Yeah.
as you do when you're a reader, but I'm just mindful that the way she presented so much more put together, which is real, right?
Yeah.
We often present a
I was
lot more
gonna
put together
say that's
than we
worth
are.
talking about, especially when we convene next week, because I think next week we should go into some favorite scenes or this or that, or sort of moments that really stuck out to us. Because I think, I don't know that there are many Black women of a certain age that don't understand that life.
Yeah.
Where your inner world is in a whole ass shamble.
Yep.
Like, but you still got to get up and go to work in the morning, whether you going for the kids, but you taking care of your mom, like, you know what I'm saying? You and no, we may not all be 5'11", putting on 6-inch size 10 Jimmy Choos and whatever, and getting out of an F type, but we all regularly put on the face.
And Lex was doing that before she had any of those trappings, right?
Yes.
Lex was doing that since she was a
Yes.
child.
Yes.
Lex was doing that.
Yeah, because you have to go to school. So after your father gets arrested and your mother gets 5150, you gotta go to school the next day.
Yep.
And the social worker knows your business and your teacher knows your business, and you hoping that they don't do the most with their eye contact so that your best friend at school finds out your business. And that eating breakfast and lunch at school is not because you feel like it, but it's because that might be the only way you eat that day.
Yep.
And so you're right. You're absolutely right in that from the moment she realized she needed to, she put that face on.
Yeah.
And she was a warrior. And it's not until the end that he's like, that's what, I don't know that that's what attracted him to her in the beginning, but I think that that's what kept him attracted to her.
Agreed.
Learning over time that she might bend, but she won't break.
Agreed. And I think, he says, right, when he says to her, you are this strong, resilient, right, woman who came through things that should have, not could have, but should have landed you, down in the dumps and maybe in a mental hospital yourself. And yet here you are, right? Here you are standing and thriving, not just surviving, but thriving. And I think, I thought to myself, would it have made a difference if he had been able to speak those words of life to her sooner? To say, look at you, right? Look at what you have accomplished. Look at what you have survived. You are not, because she just viewed herself as a survivor. And he says to her in book 3, I'm, using different words, but he basically says, no, you're doing more than surviving. My God, look at what you've done, and you just wonder, she had not heard that from anyone.
Yes.
It was clear that she hadn't heard that from anyone.
Yes.
And it may be that it didn't occur to them to say it, or they didn't think she needed to hear it, or they didn't see her because they didn't know her whole backstory, right? Because not everybody knew all that she had been through to be able to say that to her. So it really did take someone who now had an understanding of all she had been through to be like, my God, woman, you are a wonder.
Yep.
You are a wonder.
How many women need to hear that? Right. And so and sometimes to our brains, because sometimes our brains don't know the difference. So sometimes we see ourselves in these characters, and when the characters get their flowers or get their recognition, it is a balm for us or a salve for us, because in the real world, because there are many women for whom that is true.
Yeah.
And for many women, all they want, whoever want, is for somebody to recognize and acknowledge it.
Yes.
I don't always want to throw my own birthday party.
Yes.
Can one of you niggas get up and and plan the party? Because somebody surprised me. Why am I the only one? And so it's easy to slip into that narrative, especially if you're a woman or a person who has had to be it for everybody and yourself.
Yep.
And so when he finally starts to be transparent in his thinking, even when they go back to Kamigu, I think that's how you pronounce it. And he comes in there asking for his swim trunks, and he sees her praying, and he's like, well, is there anything I can do better? What you know what
yes.
I mean? He's like, how can I show up for you better than I'm showing up now? And talked about, you know, how she got him ready for the trip and even to plan it to begin with. But he starts to express to her his appreciation for her.
Yes.
Which is what should have been happening all along. Here again, he's slow.
He's slow. And just quickly, because it made me, you know, we've talked about in the past a wartime and a peacetime,
there
right?
You go.
And Lex showed she knew how to be both, right? Because to your point about wishing that she had made him suffer longer, I too would have liked to see it drag out longer. But in light of what happened, how could she do that? Right.
She loved him too much to make him suffer. She didn't want to see him in pain. She loved
That's
him.
right. Because the man lost his mama, and she was like, you know, even when he gets the call,
right.
And I felt like that was such a like a Black woman thing to do. She's like, we ain't got to put your clothes on. We got to go. Like, ask the questions later. We got to get to the hospital, right? Because somebody needs to have the presence of mind. Exactly. Somebody got to have the presence of mind to get your tail to the hospital on time, right? And then, to your point about her packing his things and making sure that he says, you know, my charging cords and stuff where they needed to be, like, she was on top of those things
and knew him well enough to be on top of those things.
Exactly. And it wasn't I've completely set, when he turns to her and he's like, Alexa, I'm packing my things, we'll be ready to check out in an hour, right? So it wasn't this is done. It was, I understand that life has thrown us this curveball.
Yes.
And I'm going to step up for you and be there for you, you know. And thankfully, that was not in vain, right? Thankfully, he rewarded or responded to his wife taking care of him the way he should have. Because again, going back to in the real world, sometimes that just gets gimme, right? That just gets received, and it is never reciprocated. You know?
Exactly right.
So, yeah.
It's a good book.
This series is just, this series is just so, woo.
It's everything. I mean, like I said, it's my favorite by her.
It is my, you know, Raj and Winter just have something for me. I
can't wait to talk about them.
Me either. But like, if they're number one, just Ezra and Lex are number two, because it's just so rich and just, oh my God, like literally you could spend 4 or 5 hours easy.
For sure.
Easy. And still have stuff to talk about.
Okay.
Hence the continuation of our discussion, so that we can cover everything.